Ringside program right here on WGSO.
Conservative or liberal? Create your own opinion and watch it evolve. To be heard, call Jeff Crouere at 661-2929 on the North Shore or 556-9696 on the South Shore.
All right, we're back. Very pleased to have a special guest joining us on the hotline. Joe Householder is joining us from a group called the Coalition for Chemical Safety. And Joe, welcome to the Ringside program. How are you?
Just fine. How are you, Jeff?
Very good. Tell us a little bit about your organization.
Well, the organization is in about a dozen states right now and growing. It is getting close to about 100 members, and those members are businesses, they're individuals, they're trade associations, local chambers of commerce and such, getting together around a simple proposition, and that is that the nation's chemical safety laws, specifically the Toxic Substances Control Act, which is over 30 years old, need to be reformed. Okay, why? Why? Well, the first principle is that given the fact that it was passed into law in 1976, now let's think about technology in 1976. Gee whiz, high technology was probably one of those pocket calculators with the red numbers that you had back then. And in that time, science's ability to detect the impact that chemicals have on the body and on the environment has advanced significantly, and the law hasn't kept pace. So there is a growing consensus in Washington, left and right, that it's time to reform the law to modernize the chemical safety laws in this country. And hasn't there been some move afoot to do that? Hasn't the EPA administrator talked about reforms? Yes, the EPA administrator has issued a set of principles that, frankly, both industry and a lot of the environmental groups are welcoming as pretty much down the line of what everyone views need to be done. In addition, some members of Congress, Senator Frank Lautenberg from New Jersey, for one, are working on legislation aimed at reforming the Toxic Substances Control Act. So while this issue hasn't gotten a lot of national publicity, it is becoming very much part of the debate here in D.C. Okay, why should our listeners care about this? Well, because it affects their lives. I mean, 98% of the products you buy have some kind of chemical in them. And safety for your family, safety at the workplace is very, very important. But also, as we go to reform these laws, while safety must be the first priority, people should care because they need to watch to make sure that the effort doesn't skew so far over to one side of the column that it also inhibits the innovation that the chemical industry brings about for this country and the jobs that the industry supports directly and indirectly. I'll give you one good example. Okay. Everybody wants less dependence on foreign oil. So we're looking for ways to generate alternative forms of energy. Solar, for example. Well, a solar cell is basically a box with a chemical film inside. An electric car is run on a battery, which is a box full of chemicals. So we can do this in ways that we can protect public safety, but we have to do it in ways to preserve that kind of innovation that will lead to those sorts of advances. Joe Householder joining us. The group is Coalition for Chemical Safety. Now, tell us what package of reforms that your group is in favor of, and what would these reforms mean? Well, we have not yet put forth any model legislation of our own. We view our role as monitoring the debate and trying to set the rails. But again, as I said, what the major thrust is to provide the Environmental Protection Agency the resources and the authority to make chemical safety decisions and determinations, working with industry. To incentivize industry to work with the EPA to reach those decisions, but also, again, a law that also incentivizes innovation, further innovation, and protects the jobs that, for example, in Louisiana, there are about 23,000 direct chemical jobs, in excess of 100,000 indirect chemical jobs, and they're good-paying jobs. I mean, they pay in excess of $85,000 a year on average, which is way above the general average. So right. So this industry, this industry is important to Louisiana. Now, others say that the chemical industry is harming the environment, and there needs to be stricter regulation of the type of
work product that we have in the chemical industry to make sure that citizens aren't harmed and the environment is not damaged.
And the Coalition for Chemical Safety agrees that the regulatory authority needs to be stiffened. Our general view is that chemicals and the EPA should be able to determine whether a chemical is safe for its intended use. And if it's not safe for that intended use, then the EPA should have the authority to restrict that use. And in fact, if it's not safe at all, the EPA should have the authority to ban that chemical altogether. And frankly, this is a point of view that many in industry also take.
So you want a stronger, more active EPA, because a lot of folks in industry would probably have a different view.
Well, there are varying points of view, but yes, in general, we want the EPA to have the authority and the resources and the people with the know-how to do this right. The problem you run into right now with the current TSCA is that a lot of states, which is within their rights, are regulating on their own. They're seeing gaps in the federal regulatory process, and they're starting to pass their own laws. And what that creates for industry is a problem because, okay, I can make this chemical in Louisiana, but I can't make it in Mississippi.
Right.
And I can sell it in South Carolina, but I can't sell it in North Carolina. And that makes the business uncertain, makes consumers unsure whether they're being protected adequately or not, and sets the whole thing awry. With a good, solid federal law, a consensus that business and government can get together on, I think you have the best of all possible worlds.
So you want sort of a standard law across the country so that you don't have a hodgepodge of different state laws sort of creating problems for the industry?
Absolutely. I mean, states should be free. Obviously, we believe that states should be free to issue any kind of regulations they want. But if you have a good, solid federal foundation, then states can focus on the other issues that they should be focusing on, like education and that sort of thing.
Joe Householder joining us. The group is Coalition for Chemical Safety, and your website is coalitionforchemsafety.com. So you've had these pronouncements from Ms. Jackson, who is, of course, heading the EPA. Where does the bill stand right now, and how many bills are going to be, I guess, introduced?
Well, that's always the fun part. You just never know, which is why organizations like ours are important to kind of call attention to these to what's going on. At the present time, there is actually nothing in the hopper. We are hearing that Senator Lautenberg is intending to introduce legislation probably within the next couple of weeks. They wanted to wait to get past the healthcare debate and all of that sort of thing. But we anticipate something. He has in the past introduced something he calls the Kid Safe Chemicals Act, which is a narrow reform of aspects of the Toxic Substances Control Act. So we're not sure if he's going to go for the whole shebang or go back to just a more narrow approach, but we're waiting to see.
You've got a lot of chapter members from Louisiana, including the Pelican Institute for Public Policy and the Louisiana Home Builder Association. So you do have some support in our state, and I guess our listeners can get the latest information at your website. What else would you like our listeners to do in the weeks ahead?
Pay attention, follow this. I mean, it's not, I'll confess, this is not as hot button an issue as healthcare to a lot of folks. It's not going to get the kind of attention that maybe some other issues might get, but it is very, very important. It's important when you go to the store and buy a product. It's important when you breathe the air. And so it is something, and it's important when you cash your paycheck every 2 weeks. So it's something that people should educate themselves on, just like the promo for your show says. Form an opinion,
right?
And then pay attention and follow it because it's key to our economy.
I just worry about trusting the EPA really to do anything. So I just hope, I hope this trust is not misplaced.
Well, I mean, the legislation has to be carefully crafted to survive the changes in government that we have periodically, and the talent that's available. But there is an agreed need for someone to be playing the role of watchdog, and the EPA is the organization situated to do that.
Okay. Well, Joe Householder, thanks so much for joining us and updating us on this. Go for more information at coalitionforchemsafety.com. And bottom line is they want to reform our nation's chemical safety laws. And it's been more than 30 years since it's happened. And this could be one of the debates that we have in Washington once health care is finally decided one way or another. And we'll see. And we'll be following it closely to see what kind of legislation is introduced and to see how it's going to affect us as consumers and those who will certainly be impacted by this. And the state of Louisiana, which is, as Joe pointed out, a state that benefits tremendously from this industry. All right, Joe, appreciate it. Joe Householder joining us. We'll link to the website on our podcast page. When we come back, we'll open up our phone lines right here on Ringside.